informative. So first, I want to welcome everyone. This is the fall 2002 Peace Week celebration. And of course, we're celebrating the fact that George Mason University has been in existence for 50 years. And we're also celebrating the fact that Peace Week gives students an opportunity to communicate their concerns and what they're learning and their interpretations to each other. And so I really appreciate this space that the university has created. And I appreciate the fact that Amber and the team allowed our graduate students to give this presentation. So we are presenting ourselves, all of us as learners. The issues we're dealing with are very complex. And so this is an opportunity to take some theories and really think, okay, now how do they apply to different situations? So my name is Mary Jo Larson. I graduated from the Carter School, which had a different name at the time, but I completed my Ph.D. there, and I've also been a chair of the advisory board and an adjunct faculty member. I'm primarily an independent consultant at this time, doing a lot of international work. I'm a former Peace Corps staff and volunteer. But this particular event is entitled The Ties That Bind, Rethinking Identity, Nationalism, and Conflict. And I'm really honored to be here with Haneul Song, Sadaf Masud, and Omar Mashhadani. Sorry, Omar. Wouldn't you know? I did it correctly in practice. So our presentation really will explore cultural and national affiliations that define identities. We're looking at worldviews and different approaches to conflict. And we're going to explore and really put our heads together to really think about how identity labels shape the ways that we are perceived individually and as groups. And also think a little bit more about the symbolism that goes with identities and the power of not just symbolism, but different structures. And of course, different power dynamics that are taking place internationally. So I think this Peace Week is strongly influenced by issues in Ukraine, by migration concerns, by, of course, what has been happening with refugee crises here well, not just in the United States, but worldwide, and all of the associated forms of violence, so symbolic, structural, and direct violence. So let's begin with personal introductions. This presentation is really centered on student communication to you, and then I will be monitoring questions. If you have questions, I mean, it may be easier for you to write your questions on a piece of paper, but if you prefer, you're welcome to put your questions in chat, which I will monitor. And then there will be a certain point where we will open up the conversation for your comments and questions, and really will appreciate your feedback. And then the speakers will have a chance to respond and then give you their final thoughts and kind of pearls of wisdom, their own thoughts from their own experiences and their own cultural backgrounds. So let's go ahead and begin with the introductions, because the backgrounds of the speakers really make a sense, set the context for the way these speakers perceive what is taking place internationally. So Haneul, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Professor Larson. First, let me share the screen for our presentation. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Haneul Song, the leader of the team, who also feels honorable to participate in this Peak Week session of the Carter School, George Mason University. I hope you have enjoyed all our sessions this week, which would reassure Carter School's identity dedicated to peace and conflict resolution studies. We are so glad to deliver this presentation. And also, we would like to thank Professor Mary Jo Larson for such an insightful facilitation. Our topic today is the ties that bind, rethinking identity, nationalism, and conflict. Our individual identities, including personal, family, and national backgrounds, will help you understand our perspectives, observations, and insights on the topic, which is related to identities, nationalism, and conflict. And there are a variety of factors that cause conflicts, such as identity, interest, or power dynamics. So being aware of these factors, therefore, could lead to better understanding of conflicts. We have 3 members in total, and each one will be presenting on different subtopics. In Carter School, all 3 of us are pursuing different diverse concentrations. Omar and Sadaf in their concentration of conflict sensitivity, development, and resilience, while I've created my own individualized concentration of leadership for multi-layer conflict resolution. All perspectives of 3 of us altogether consist of a research question. What are the ties that bind? Rethinking identity, nationalism, and conflict. The answer to this question might be open to every diverse perspective you might have, and therefore, we hope you find your own meaningful clues to this question altogether, as well as enjoy our presentation. So let us first briefly introduce ourselves. To begin with, I am Haneul Song, a graduate student in the Carter School in my 3rd semester in master's degree in conflict analysis and resolution. I'm from South Korea, and this is the photo of my passport issued by the Republic of Korea. On this palm-sized note, I carry the most important identity here in the United States, which is my nationality. Beside the nationality, I identify myself as a male, a graduate student, a soccer fan, a Christian, and many other personal characteristics. But as long as I stay here as an international student, nothing legally prevails nationality. In fact, your nationality not only reveals which country you are from, but also delivers information on your other identities, such as language, culture, history, traditions, customs, and many other ones. So it could be a good clue to understand other people, the metropolitan society, and eventually this global world. Maybe that's why our university also often holds events encouraging us to understand others' diverse backgrounds based on nationalities, such as International Week, as shown in the picture. Unfortunately, I missed this event, but I hope you have enjoyed participating in this parade as well. So not only me, everyone has individual identities. Now, let me turn the microphone to my colleague Sadaf to introduce her identities.
Hello, everyone. I am Sadaf Masud, and I am in my last year of the program. I was born in Kabul, Afghanistan. I am a Sunni Tajik, and I speak Dari or Farsi. I've been in the US for 22 years, and I've traveled to 10 different countries and many cities. I've had the opportunity to learn 4 languages and an important aspect of different cultures and traditions of the countries. During my travels, I've met a lot of people from all walks of life with unique cultural practices, traditional languages, and backgrounds. As an Afghan American, my goal is to continue to travel, meet new people, and enhance the different cultures we have. Now to you, Omar.
Thank you, Sadaf. This is Omar. And when you ask me to introduce myself, it's kind of telling me to say your identity. And this is probably the core of this presentation. Well, I don't know where to start, but let me start with the most common thing, the circle that we all share here, which is Carter School. I'm master's degree students at Carter School, father of 2 children. I'm Iraqi American. I have 2 citizenships, and I was born in Baghdad, and glad to be here with you.
Okay, thank you all for your introductions. And now we'll be giving individual presentations on different subtopics. First, Omar will deliver his presentation. Please, Omar.
Thank you, Haneul. Well, in my part, I will talk about patriotism versus nationalism. Right now in the United States of America, there's a big debate about 2 terms that reflects huge meanings that could determine the shape of the United States as a country. These 2 terms are nationalism and patriotism. It is obvious that nationalism came from the word nation, which means a group of people who think they are sharing ancestry, history, culture, etc. But are we as Americans share these backgrounds? And what about our diversity? Aren't we coming from different ancestry, history, culture, and tongues? To solve this puzzle, some scholars like Ronald Tyreski suggest that we should describe our aspiration toward this state as a patriotism that does not require one common ancestry. It allows for multiculturalism, for freedom of speech, and defending the core principle of constitutional rights that unify diverse individuals and cultures within their country. Next, please, Haneul. Well, this debate is similar to what has been going on in Iraq for years. Some people questioned if Iraq was ever a nation, if the people share a common ancestry, or if the state is nothing but groups with huge differences. Before navigating more, I want to share something that I see as essential here, which is that both nationalism and patriotism have the same meaning in Arabic and the same word in so many examples, which is wataniya in Arabic. However, they have different meanings in other instances. Nationalism can be more used to describe the ethnic background of the groups, qawmiyya, while patriotism means loyalty to the country and the belief in the unity of the people. States or country in Arabic is watan, so patriotism is wataniya. Next, please, Haneul. Now, let's begin with declaring Iraq as a nation state in 1921. Back then, the first king of the new kingdom of the Britain, or that the Britain decided to name Iraq, pointed to the dilemma of differences between Iraqis. And let me read this quotation that so many Iraqis are repeating often on Facebook and social media. I say, and my heart is full of sorrow, that I believe that there is no Iraqi nation in Iraq yet, but rather there is imaginary human masses lack of any national idea, saturated with religious traditions and falsehood that are not united at all. They listen to evil, prone to chaos, and are always ready to rise up against any government. Next, please. And let me also speak about some groups in Iraq, specifically Kurds, who they don't believe that they are part of Iraq as a nation, but they believe that they have the right to establish their own nation. As you can see in the map, this is where the Kurds are live in the world. They believe in the Kurdish nation. For that reason, they have been involved during the past decades in violent struggles, not just in Iraq, even in Turkey, Syria, Iran, and other parts. And right after 2003, the American invasion to Iraq, they held two non-binding referendums for independence. And in both cases, the majority goes with the independence. We are talking here about more than 90% of Kurds who they voted to separate from Iraq and establish their state. It's not surprising that Arabs, as the majority in Iraq, feel the same. For years and years, the Ba'ath regime, the Ba'ath party, who was led by Saddam Hussein, kept repeating that Iraq is nothing more than a small part of the Arab nation. Therefore, nationalism must be superior to patriotism. Qawmiyya is more important than wataniyya. Being Arab is more important than being Iraqi. Next, please, Haneul. After 2003, the Islamic political movement just, bloomed and flourished. Came with a new old age concept of the Islamic nation, not just ISIS, by the way, who they believe in the Islamic State, but most of the Islamic political movement. For Shia Islamists, Iraq is part of Shia Islamic nation. For Sunnis, Iraq is part of Sunni Islamic nation. And this map, you can see where is the Sunnis live, where does the Shia live. But the question that we want to rise here is, what about the people who believe in Iraq as a home? What about the diversity? What about the fact that Iraq is mixed? Kurds, Arabs, Turkmen, Muslims, Christians, Yazidis, and many other religions. Just like in America, we are not just like white, black, Latino, Arabs. We are not just Christians, Muslims. The answer lies in the concept of patriotism. Simply, Iraq is not a nation. Iraq is a state for different nations must believe, the people must believe in the state and be loyal to this state is what could bind these people within the boundary of Iraq, just like in the United States. And by this, I just end my part and pass it to Sadaf.
Thank you, Omar. So a shared social identity involves actors seeing themselves as one with other people and enables perception of unity, togetherness, and community spirit. So an example that I find helpful looking back is the history of Afghanistan. Afghanistan is known as the country of graveyards of empires, not only because of the strategic location, but also because of tribalism. The country has a diversity variety of people. It has three main languages, Dari, Pashto, and Uzbeki, and several similar linguistic communities such as Pashai, Kazakhi, Baluchi, and Nuristani. It is mostly a tribal society with different regions of the country having its own subculture, language, and nationality. Nearly all Afghans follow the Islamic tradition, celebrate the same holidays, dress the same, consume the same food, listen to the same music, and are multilingual to a certain extent. Despite the differences in the circumstances throughout the years, the leaders of Afghanistan have had the same ambition to create a political order that would be singular enough to unify all Afghans, yet enough to accommodate and reconcile the internal divisions. Throughout history, the leaders of the country deployed several ideological blueprints. It was a secular nationalism under King Amallah Khan from 1919 to 1929, constitutional monarchy under King Zahir Shah from 1933 to 1973, reformist socialism under the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, which was led by Nur Muhammad Taraki, communist, 1965 to 1979, and the theocratic dictatorship under the Taliban and continuing now, and electoral democracy under Hamid Karzai and Ashraf Ghani. Next, please. Sometimes one's sense of identity can cause more harm than good. Our belonging is not dependent on whether others accept us, but whether we accept ourselves, how we are and how we are seen. As the leaders force oppositions to reform their competing political orders of religion, ethnic allegiance, and tribal loyalties, ethnic groups started defining the Afghan nation exclusively in their own image. In doing so, false comfort of a singular, uncontested, immutable national identity was created instead of entertaining and diverse, often competing in versions of Afghan identity. Next, please. So social identity can be considered a variety of things. Identifying with a certain country or country gives us a sense of pride or self-esteem, which allows us to feel part of the social world. But besides our distinct ethnic identities, we Afghans share a common culture identity. We are known for our hospitality, independence, loyalty, code of honor, and love for our family and country. Despite the differences, our love for our country unites us as one. Thank you. Back to you, Haneul.
Thank you very much, Sadaf and Omar, for your wonderful presentations. To explain nationality and conflict, I would like to introduce an impressive framework regarding conflicts. For this, I recall the quote on the first class of course Con 658, which was Diversity and Difference of Conflict Analysis and Resolution with Professor Mary Jo Larson last semester. In finite and infinite games, cards suggest that there are at least two kinds of games, finite and infinite. A finite game is played for the purpose of winning, and an infinite game for the purpose of continuing the play. And from my perspective, this categorization penetrates the very essential premise of conflict analysis and resolution. When the game is played finite, there is no value more important than just winning now, even by every way and mean possible. There is no future chances to win more, lose more, or even revenge. When the game is played at infinite, on the other hand, there exist more values other than victory and defeat, which is sustainability of the relationship. Considering the result of this game also matters in the next games as well, the approach should also put sustainability into consideration. A merciless win, even when possible, could kill the goose laying the golden eggs. This explains the basis of conflict resolution. Conflict matters because it's the infinite game, which requires the sustainability of the relationship to be considered as well. That's why how we analyze, resolve, and manage the conflicts matters not only in the given phase, but also repeatedly in the long run as well. This metaphor could be perfectly applied to international conflicts too. The global society is definitely playing an infinite game. And as the famous saying goes on international relations goes, there is no eternal alliance, nor eternal enemy. For example, Russia and Ukraine, who are currently waging war for multiple months, were both intimate member states in the United Socialist Soviet Republic just a few decades ago. The global society is definitely playing an infinite game, and this could be addressed soon again. The ties that bind remind me of two major contrasting perspectives on nationalism and conflict, especially in terms of the war on Ukraine. Idealism puts emphasis on ethical values in the global society, including human rights, peace, global cooperation, and sovereignty. In contrast, realism argues that every nation tends to eventually pursue its interest in reality. As a result, it's the pure power dynamics that runs the global society, therefore often leading to conflicts, even involving armed clashes. This framework is such a good tool to dive into the war in Ukraine. In reality, this couple of the opposing views seem to work in a different manner, claiming individual logic. Firstly, realism could be persuasive in analysis of the outbreak of the war itself. Ukraine has recently tried to join the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is NATO, in concern of its national security. Meanwhile, Russia has been insisting that its national security is being threatened by the enlargement of the NATO. While the argument of the both sides remain unresolved, Russia has chosen to invade Ukraine with its overwhelming superior of power. On the contrary, idealism accounts for the response of global society in the wartime itself. A number of countries, including the United States and the European Union, have declared sanctions on Russia in protest of the outbreak of the war. Not only governments, but also civil societies have stood for solidarity with Ukrainian people. As the Economist report goes, although facing realistic problems, Europe is trying its best to aid refugees from Ukraine. Moreover, not a few veterans from all over the world have already volunteered to organize troops to fight for freedom and democracy of Ukraine. I wish peace to be soon to be recovered, and will keep an eye on the news to continue this analysis from both sides, and even after this Peace Week presentation. So this is the end of our major subtopics. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave in chat or ask us directly or ask through the Professor Mary-Jo Larson. Thank you very much.
Professor Larson.
On. Yes, so Haneul, can you reduce the screen? First, I want to thank every one of you. So Haneul for organizing, Omar and really Sadaf, thank you. Those were presentations that took some deep thought, and I so appreciate your willingness to share your backgrounds, but also to let us know some of the concepts from your studies that have really influenced the way you were analyzing the situations in your own home countries, but also comparing it to the United States and Ukraine. I want to know, before I ask you any questions, if any of the participants that are online, if any of the students have a question, if you would raise your hand or speak up. Any particular questions? All right, so someone named Kitty. Kitty, okay. Kitty, what else? Her question is, what issues do you see in how manipulated patriotism or nationalism can be by narratives? So this is going back to the difference between patriotism and nationalism. Now I wonder if Kitty is looking at as two concepts, both can be manipulated. So what I understood when Omar began this presentation was that actually he was seeing the danger in so many parts of the world, but familiar with his own background in Iraq, of putting so much emphasis on one ethnic group and one nation. So Omar, do you see I believe the question is, what are the risks you see in both patriotism and nationalism?
Well,
Do you
back
see
to
risks in both?
yes, it's the narrative. Well, my grandfather was born in Iraq during the Ottoman Empire. Sorry. So back then he used it to chant for the Sultan, Abdul Hamid al-Thani. And my dad, when he was a kid, Iraqi state justice has been established, and he used to chant for the kings. And when I was born during Saddam Hussein time, I must what do you call it in English, praise Saddam Hussein. He's the greatest leader, the Arab, blah blah blah. So in each time, in each period, there is different narrative about us, about being part of, you are Ottomani. No, you are Iraqi, belong to the royal family. And after that, being Ba'athi, and you must be Arab. And this is also kind of the problem in Iraq after 2003. We couldn't find a common narrative about who are we and what do we want to be in the future. Are we Iraqis? Are we Muslims? Are we Arabs? What kind of narrative? And I believe this is the mission of the intelligentsia, elites, and also the government, to find a common narrative for the future. And I read a lot from Professor Sarah Cobb, she's unfortunately gonna give the last class before she's retiring from Carter School. So yeah, yes, if you emphasize on one part, you will, you would witness bad consequences, and specifically what we can see right now in Iraq.
Omar, I think it's so interesting to hear your response, because you took us back to the narratives when you were young, and the narratives that influenced your family and the way that you framed your country. And then the way you finished your description was how important it is not to think of the past, but the future. And so, I mean, that whole mindset of shifting to the future and the responsibility to think about the future, it was a very interesting point for me. Haneul or Sadaf, did you want to share with us something about your own experiences with the stories you heard in the past, and how it affects your perspective? So, for example, if I were to go to Sadaf, what was the narrative that you heard when you were a child in terms of your identity, and then how does it affect the way you think of the future in a realistic way for Afghanistan? Because I'm looking at you, and I'm also adding the gender perspective, if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you. So it really does have, it could be a positive impact and a negative impact, depending on where you grew up. During my presentation, I went over how my country is very tribal, and a lot of the background and a lot of that comes in where you're from. And some people look down on one tribal than the other. So in order to superiorize yourself into that system, it's not a caste system, but into that system of national identity, more than patriotism that we have created for ourselves in my country, really impacts you, because when you're born, like Omar said, and you're in a high class family, then you are taught to look down at the lower class. So you could have friends that are from a different tribal group, but you have that connection, that mutual respect. But when it comes to marriage, when it comes to friendship, then it's looked down on. So that's one thing that really specifically, as a woman, has a huge impact on the Afghan people, on the Afghan women, on the Afghan society. And it honestly continues now in America and outside world, because it's something that is in your head as you're growing, as you're developing, until it gets to the point that where I stand now, and when someone comes and approaches me and asks me, where are you from? I say, I'm from Afghanistan. I don't say my nationality. I don't say what tribe I am, because I want to create that identity and image that we are all one, and it doesn't matter where we're from. It doesn't matter the specifics. It's not like I want to continue that bad tradition of narratives that was kept passing on. And every family is different. So that really, really has a huge impact on where you really grew up and what family, depending on the system. I hope that kind of answered it.
Yes, thank you, Sadaf. You've added another element of this question of identity and separateness and diversity that I want to come back to, which is class. But before we do, Haneul, you haven't really said too much about North Korea, South Korea, perceptions of identity. And also, if you don't mind, add a little bit more about your professional background, anything that's influenced the way you analyze things and your vision for the future.
Okay, thank you. Talking about the war in Ukraine, actually, I have come up with a similar case in my home country. And as you might all know, currently there exists two Koreas, South and North, or the Republic of Korea, where I am from, and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which is North. And we have been divided after the World War II, and there was even a war for 3 years in the mid of the past century. And after the truce, the Korean Peninsula has been one of the most dangerous forefronts of the Cold War period on this planet for multiple decades. And even now, there are a lot of troops confronting along the demilitarized zone, which is quite ironical. And so in both Koreas, males are generally required to fulfill military services in their youth, unless they have serious mental or physical handicaps. I myself too have fulfilled the military service as an officer at the rank of captain of the Republic of Korea Air Force. So of course, it was personally my honor to serve my motherland, but it might be a sort of strategy to antagonize each other for generations. So we hope peace will recover soon in Korea, of course, and Ukraine too as well. And yeah, so the Air Force officer was one of my identities. And actually, before coming to Carter School, I have worked as a deputy director of the Ministry of Economy and Finance of the Republic of Korea government. So that's how I came to be interested in economic conflict, to be specific. So I came here to learn about conflicts in terms of economy or in terms of identity as well. So that's how I've come to deliver this presentation today.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Haneul, because what that does for us is really help us to understand a dimension of conflict that we don't discuss that often in our courses, which is, we talk so much about the identity, the social, the communication skills, the belonging, the need to address narratives, etc. We touch on structures and recognize structures, of course, different systems. It's definitely part of our conversation. We don't that often that I know of bring in the power of the economy and the significance of economy in terms of the leveraging that takes place with power asymmetry and many of these conflicts. So I wanted to ask you one last question, and then I'll go back to the chat room. But Sadaf brought up class, and you mentioned economics and a socioeconomic level. I'm wondering where that fits into a sense of identity and also a willingness to be open to different ways of thinking and being. How important is class, do you think, in identity? Omar, would you like to refer to that? You're in Qatar, so maybe you have some thoughts as well.
Well, that's a great question. I've started when I introduced myself with the idea that our identity is fluid. So we have circles. Which circle is more affected us than the other? Back to, let's just talk about Iraq. Back to 50s, the classification, economic classification was really essential thing, especially, you know, with the rise of communism around the world. So back then, yes, if you are poor, most of poor people, they just go to join the Communist Party and they start to, you know, educate about equality, economic equality, these things. And they, you know, arrange themselves, they make their selves, and they try to get to rule the country. So yes, I would say in some cases, the economies, it's also part of our identity. If you are rich in Iraq, maybe the way that you think about the problems, political problems, religious problems, is totally different if you are poor. I've read a lot about the civil wars, and including even in Iraq. Whenever there is poverty, we should expect more extremism. And if there is extremism, there is terrorism. And I guess that's what I want to say about this question.
Okay, so when your status is comfortable, it affects the way you would think about change.
It affects also the way that you educate yourself. Where are you gonna go to study, and who's gonna, you know, who's gonna be your friend? If you are poor, and back in 1990, when the United States actually and the United Nations decided to enforce embargo on Iraq, most of Iraqis, you know, being just found themselves having not enough to have food. Most of youth, since they don't have money to drink as they used to drink alcohol and go to the bars as they used to do for decades, they found themselves going to the mosque and being more religious. And when they became more religious, that's facilitated or paved the way after 2003 for thousands, or let me say 100,000 of youths to just go and be recruited by the Islamic political parties. And even, you know, after that, we saw Al-Qaeda, which was Iraqi, we didn't know about them before. And also that's lead to the to ISIS. So back to the question, yes, your economic situation would actually draw the line for your future in country like Iraq.
Thanks. Sadaf or Haneul, did you want to respond to that question of how your socioeconomic status affects you? Perhaps I'll start with Sadaf, because as a female, I have the sense that you actually feel, I don't know if realize you were muted, but what are your thoughts about the gender issue in Afghanistan and how it relates to whether it's urban and rural women or women? Is there something in religion that is affecting the mindset of women, or do you really think it has more to do with socioeconomic level? How do you explain what I've observed, which is there are completely different mindsets about the status of women depending on their backgrounds? Yes, among Afghanis?
Yes, so the Afghan culture is weird. And because our culture, majority of the Afghan population is Muslim, Islam plays a major role in our country. So if you were to really follow the Islamic rule, Afghan women are really, really respected. You know, Muslim women, I should say. Muslim women are respected in all aspects of living. They're nurtured, they're respected, they're given power, you know, but culturally, they're not, especially the difference between living in the city and living in a rural country. As
Okay.
a person, as a woman, to have power in the government, living in the city and having that system of money and having that system of background, rich background, you're more respected than someone living off in a rural area who has the same power, but you don't have the, you could be a government official powering in a rural area, and you could be a government official powering in a capital city. Capital city has more power. They have more people behind them, whereas rural area, women don't have it. And that's because what follows you is that system of how much money you got, how much people respect you based on that, and also education, lack of education. Mostly educated people that are women that are working with men that are in the same office, they're in the city areas. So it's not about just the female itself, and it's about the work environment that that person is. And that work environment, if you really know your religion, then you have more respect and power. But if you don't know, or like the rural areas in Afghanistan, what we have been seeing in the news, what we have been seeing seeing and kind of receiving from history is that power means wealth, power means education, power means a background, power means family. If your own family doesn't support you, you're powerless. If your own family, you know, you could be powerful, you could be rich and work for the parliament, but if your family doesn't have that support, that network in you, you're really powerless. So it really depends on where you are and who you are as a woman and where you're standing and how you believe in yourself. We do have great leaders, women in Afghanistan. Actually, my aunt was a very powerful woman in Afghanistan before she passed. And she was working in the government, and she maintained her status throughout all the regimes that came over because of who she was and how she carried herself and how much she was respected from the family. So I hope that answers that.
No, thank you very much. That broadens kind of it breaks the stereotype that many people have about the situation in Afghanistan. I too had a friend who was actually older than I am, but and she was raised in Kabul and well educated, and the women had power, and it was a situation where that was the assumption. Of course, she was high status as well.
Yes.
She was definitely high socioeconomic status. And well, is this a challenging question for you? I don't know that I've ever heard a discussion of class and socioeconomic status and what difference it makes in identity in South Korea. And of course, the contrast with North Korea would be dramatic.
Yeah, I think there are two types of identities in general. Identity you are born with, and on the other hand, identity you achieve. For example, I'm born as a male, a Korean. So those identities are which I born with, while like a graduate student in career school is what I've achieved. So I think as this society advances, it should be the identity you achieve that should matter rather than identity you are born with. So that means you are given every other opportunity to change your status, to change your destiny, and change your life. So I think the society with more opportunities to change your own identities you achieve is a better society. So South Korea is absolutely trying its best, but as we are having some troubles nowadays, but I think it'll get better after all, and for all other countries as well.
Haneul, that was a very beautiful way to summarize what we were hoping to do toward the end, which is share some pearl of wisdom. And what you just mentioned is truly significant. It's the whole question of opportunities that people have and what they achieve with those opportunities. that is very promising. Omar, there's a question here. If I could turn back to you, that is it possible that one person's patriotism could be a nationalism to another person? It makes me think that it's still, those two concepts are still hard for people to understand. Like, so could you elaborate a little more about the promise of patriotism versus nationalism to really strengthen the clarity of what those two terms mean?
Well, I would come with an example of the United States of America. Let's talk about what happened on January 6th. If you ask the people who they just, did the riot, why they did that thing, they would say because we love the nation, we love America, we want to make America great again. But is that patriotism? This is the question. And I would say this question would answer the question of is patriotism could be nationalism to another person? Yes, for me, if you think this is patriotism, I would say no, this is not. Did you go for America or did you go for Trump? The same thing, actually, I would ask back to 90s for the people in Saddam Hussein. Did you stand with Saddam Hussein because you love Iraq or because you just stand with Saddam Hussein? This is also give us the, it will be clear answer about the difference between loyalty to the states as a patriotism and nationalism as, being extremist to a specific concept.
Okay. So there's a mindset that you're implying there's a real difference in the mindset in that nationalism is much more linked to there's an identity that it is rooted in and a loyalty to an identity that is more closed. It's a more closed system of what you expect the features and the qualities of your country to be. It's much more tribal than. Pardon me?
Like white supremacy, Professor.
Yes.
White supremacy in the United States. People maybe they just go with this because from their perspective, this is patriotism. But the question is,
they use the word patriotism. Right. Okay. So patriotism is actually a concept that's much more inclusive of a variety, a diversity of different nations. Right. And there's a unity that's a loyalty that really relates to the opportunities and the structures that provide the opportunities and the fairness, the law. So there's definitely an emotional connection with patriotism, but it really has to do with the values that you associate with the equal opportunity for everyone. It's definitely in a mindset and in your heart as well. And Sadaf, if I could turn back to you, you said some when you were talking about the identity and how much difference it makes. I was listening to you and you recognize how important it is for your family to, there's an emotional aspect to identity that really shapes the way that you've thought about your future, from what I can tell, because there's something in the narrative of your family, but also I hear something that's future oriented in your thinking as well. There's something about your values and the way you look to the future. So could you as a final kind of statement, because I have to be careful of time, but what do you see as promising for Afghanistan as you look to the future? Are you interacting with Afghans in the United States that really can see a promising future? Is there something in your family background that gives you hope about the future?
Yes. So I am connected with many of the newcomers, and I've been trying to help, create different GoFundMe accounts, create donations around where I work, and I'm trying to stay connected. Growing up, it was very important to both of my parents to make sure that we maintain our identity as an Afghan, maintain our culture, maintain our language, maintain who we are and where we come from. And it's a reminder for us almost every week or every month or every time something comes in. And they told us that, don't forget where you came from. You know where you're here. You're on a mission. Your life is a mission. You need to do what the world has given back to you. And to me, that really shapes the person I am. Growing up, I did travel a lot. I still travel a lot. I love traveling. I love meeting new people. Just creating my own personality, my own bubbles by intaking what everyone else is putting into my plate. So, with that being said, I think that our values, our morals definitely shape who we are, while culture plays a big role. I think that
Yes.
what we believe in and how we experience life forms and
Mhm.
changes our identity throughout our lifetime. And I think
Mhm.
we need to learn more about each other and understand that our differences is what makes us unique, you know. So
Mhm.
no two individuals are the same. Like look at your siblings, or better yet, look at your mom. Your mom carried you for 9 months inside her womb, right? When you come out, you have your own individual characteristic uniqueness that you just came out from this person that gave birth to you, and yet you're so different than your mom. Like think about that. We are so
Yeah.
different than our own mom,
Mhm.
the closest thing that anything God has put us into. We're so unique and we're so different. So keeping that in mind, stop
Mhm.
trying to teach people how to be like you is a message,
Yeah.
and start to respect them for who they are.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
And help them to grow.
to grow.
Help them to grow.
Yes,
Yes.
because not
And help them to
everybody,
grow.
I know now that not everybody in my circle, in my path that I've came across has experienced the same or similar or close to what I've experienced. And I'm
Mhm.
grateful for every moment, whether it was a lesson learned or an experience gained or memories made, that I've came across to who I am, and I will continue to support as an Afghan American. I will never forget that I'm an American, you know, because I have my
Mhm.
American pride. As an Afghan American, I will continue to support both countries, both cultures, but never, never try to dis or misuse both of them in any way that would, you know, harm anybody or bring a negative
Right.
impact or disbenefit me from living my life.
So actually, those are ties that bind you, but in a more inclusive way. So
Mhm.
it isn't restricting you, and it isn't limiting you to the past. You know, when we think of the ties that bind your culture, really, for
I
listening
live,
to you gives you a strength and a pride,
oh,
and
definitely.
actually a generosity in helping others. And Hanuel, if we could wrap it up with you, there is actually a really interesting question in. I'm sorry to everyone that we don't have time to come to all the chats, but Connor Joseph Cuevo says, also, to what extent does the perception of games matter? For instance, someone who wants to use resources might be playing a finite game, and someone who wants to conserve them might be playing an infinite game, right? And even though both parties are competing over the same resources in the same scenario, okay, that's a very sophisticated question. Good luck, Manuel. What are your
Yeah, thank you
thoughts?
very much for your question. From my perspective, whether it's finite game or infinite game depends on the sustainability of your relationship. For example,
Yeah.
Connor, if I have a conflict with you now, because it'll be a definitely finite game because we are closing in 3 minutes. But as we are having conflict in reality, like face to face, that'll be an infinite game. So in the example you have suggested, maybe the natural resources are we have to conserve it to the next generations and generations. So that'll be automatically infinite games. So I think that helps. And as we have little time left, here I
Yeah.
am providing a final takeaway as the team leader. So I think it'll be the best way is think about what the conflict is. What do you think conflict is? So there could be diverse definitions possible. So among them, I think conflict could be summarized into violation of expectations of the ties that bind us together, which is
Mhm.
also included in our title today as well. So therefore, especially in terms of conflicts from identities and nationalities, which we have dealt together, it might be important to restore the ties that bind us. So it could be the value of humanity, or the value of peace, the value of coexistence, or infinite games, or even idealism in international relations I have interest today. So the Peace Week session of the Carter School is such a meaningful event for us to rethink the ties that bind with identity, nationalism, and conflict. So It has been our great pleasure to have a meaningful discussion with you all today, and we all hope you have enjoyed our presentation today. So I'm afraid that this Zoom link will be closing in a minute. So thank you very much for your listening. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
joining this room and participation, and have a great weekend. Thank you all.
Thank you, Haneul and Omar and Sadaf. It's really an honor to listen to you and I have so much respect for you and so much hope for the future when I listen to you and the depth of your thinking at this stage in your lives. So the future is yours, and I really appreciate the insights that you shared with us today. So all the best to you and to everyone who joined us. I really appreciate you joining us, and thank you for taking the time. It's really wonderful that you came here on a Friday afternoon. That's very impressive. Okay, goodbye, everyone.